Feeling inspired by hosts Ron and Tyler to work on your health? The MovieBuffs Podcast is brought to you by Time to Train Fitness, your home for on-demand workouts for every level of fitness. Exercise with amazing certified instructors that want you to push through any barriers. At Time to Train Fitness, you'll find quality workouts across 6 class formats, including indoor cycling, HIIT, bar, yoga, strength training, and dance cardio. Stream brand new classes releasing every week in our 450 plus on-demand workout library. Use the link in the description to view all of the membership options and to start a free 5-day trial. Get ready to press play on your next workout.
Hey everybody, Ron Jam here, and I'm excited to talk to you today about our sponsor. For any of my fellow fitness buffs out there who love to train, you also know that hard training leads to aches and pains, and that's why I love today's sponsor, Royal & Pure CBD. Their philosophy is to enhance your life with pure ingredients that you and your pet can feel good taking. Royal & Pure products combine the healing properties of hemp-derived CBD with other active botanical ingredients to enrich your daily activities and ease the aches, inflammation, and pains that come from being active, aging, or just daily life. I use their salve on all my achy spots, especially on my recovery days, and I always use their PM tincture to help me get a great night's sleep and recover to hit it hard the next day. They're offering our listeners 20% off at checkout by using code RONJAM20. So if you're interested in checking out their great products and seeing just how helpful they can be, visit royalandpure.com and use code RONJAM20 at checkout for 20% off. Okay, time for the show. Yeah, boom, tap. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the MovieBuffs Podcast, the strongest podcast in the world about movies. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Ron Jam, joined as always by LT Gray. And today, oh my God, today you are in for a treat, as this is the only podcast in the entire world where I battle through horrendous, absolutely terrible onion breath. That is thanks to the Chipotle on Topanga Canyon deciding to totally bone me and fill my double chicken, white rice, and light bean burrito with an inexplicably high amount of red onion. Other than that, how's it going today, Tyler?
Double chicken? You adding on that protein there?
It's April starts the cut, so I'm just trying to get used to it, up in my protein numbers a little bit.
Protein.
Yeah, I gotta get Shredsville.
Dig it.
Mm-hmm. What's going on with you, man? You have any updates before we jump into this warm up?
No real update. I'm more excited that we're podcasting today. We didn't last week because you had some exciting stuff going on, which I hope maybe later on you'll share on the podcast. But I'm excited. We got some news to go over. We got some Batman stuff to talk about, and then an exciting, maybe exciting, but a Netflix movie to talk about.
Yeah, and the good thing about the movie we're covering today, which is The Adam Project, is that it's totally accessible. So if you haven't seen it yet,
yes,
listen to the podcast up until that main set, turn it off, go watch the movie, and come back.
Yep.
So there's no reason to skip this episode. Tyler, Kevin, who else is out there? Vince, anybody. If you haven't, don't skip this episode. Aaron. If you haven't seen Aaron, if you haven't seen The Adam Project, just go watch it. Hey, go watch it. All right. So speaking of fans and people that are out there that we're doing this for, I want to start this week's warm up with a brand new segment, and that is the fan mail segment. Now, Tyler has no idea what this fan mail is going to be. It was actually at the behest of the fans that wrote it. So, Tyler, are you ready?
I'm excited.
Okay. So our first letter goes, Tyler Durden and Ronald McDonald. I also left before the end credits of The Batman. Rata Alada is genius marketing, and using the internet to create more buzz around your movie is a brilliant idea. Signed, Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee, Vince and Menifee.
Okay.
All right. And this second one is directed straight to me as Laron Trujillo. Your wife calls you Optimus Prime for being upbeat. My wife calls my positivity a different name. Signed, Magic Johnson. So, Tyler, what do you have to say out there to our fans that are writing us these beautiful letters?
I have no idea where you get these or make these up in your strange head.
I swear to God, I didn't make these up. Shouts out to V and the Fee for writing in. He's also a frequent collaborator on the Jim Rome show. So shout out to Jim Rome and my guy V. Now that we've gotten through the fan mail segment and Tyler has absolutely no interesting spin to add to it, let's jump right into the industry news. Tyler, you got something for me to react to?
Hopefully I can get through this, as I'm just as confused as probably the listeners with the fan mail, but I'll kick it off with probably the thing that everybody is talking about around Hollywood movies is the slap heard world round. And
I'm going to tell you exactly what I wrote in our notes. Nope.
Well, interesting enough.
Nope.
The Academy Awards did actually ask Will Smith to leave after the incident, and he refused to. And that was something I thought was an interesting piece to bring to the podcast.
Nope.
I can't say, putting hands on somebody is something I can put my hands behind. But I will say that sticking up for your wife is something I do. I do stand behind.
Yeah, I think it was an unfortunate event. You definitely shouldn't hit somebody for making a joke, but this is just on the wider spectrum of things. With the internet, people like talk crap. And you and I were joking about this one time too, when someone was spamming us with people should be a little hesitant to talk shit to people just in case.
Yeah.
So I don't think you should slap people at work, but just as a worldwide PSA to other individuals, you should be worried about talking shit about someone or to someone because they might hit you.
Yeah, good point there, especially with, this is what I've kind of stood behind too, and why it's probably been hard for me to just say, oh, Will Smith is in the wrong, is that his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, has a disease. Yeah. And I don't think any jokes about anybody having a disease are funny.
All right. So what's our next piece of news before we start going down this rabbit hole, this slap it hole any further?
So heated. Well, somebody that we've joked about, and I actually tamed this down because I don't know why, but Euphoria's Sydney Sweeney to star opposite Dakota Johnson in Madam Web movie. So assuming this is a PG-13 and we don't get any Euphoria action in this, any guesses on who she would play?
So I have one big guess. And this guess is kind of all-encompassing, and it's going to talk about a movie we're going to discuss next week, if it exists. Now, I think the Madam Web movie exists in the same universe as Morbius and New Mutants, in that it does not exist. I don't think this movie's going to happen. I think Morbius, even though apparently it came out, doesn't exist. No one can prove whether or not New Mutants exists. So I think this movie will fall apart because from the reviews I've seen, Morbius is crashing and burning before it's even come out. People tend to have mostly nothing but negative things to say. And the most intriguing part, and the reason I'm going to see it tomorrow night, which will be Thursday, is because I've heard that the movie is bad. It's as bad as you expect, if not a little bit worse. But there are 2 end credit scenes. Do not tell me of them, Tyler, if you know. But they are so bad. They are universe breaking and apparently take terribleness to the next level. And the director has been tweeting about them. So I was like, I have to see what that means. So that's my idea for Madam Web. Now let's move on.
Okay. Interesting. I'm just going to make one side joke that I have seen New Mutants. So maybe I'll do a back day so that
But you can't prove it exists, dude. I can say I've seen the freaking Sasquatch and I can tell you a bunch about him, but it doesn't mean he exists.
Hey, I can't tell you how many Sasquatch documentaries there are out there. Blows my mind that that's still something that gets made on a yearly basis.
Yeah, man. And don't forget, plural for Sasquatch is Sasquatch.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, I made that up.
We'll keep moving on.
Yeah.
A while back, and I think probably in like 2 podcasts, we joked about Deep Water. Mm-hmm. I know we had it on our Flop or Not, which is, I feel like by now, a pretty funny series that we did, a segment that we did that was a fan favorite. Ooh. So go check that one out a while back. But
the fan Tyler is referring to is his wife.
That is correct. She enjoyed it. Well, Deep Water. I'm sure Ron has not seen it by now. I have not seen it, and we'll probably joke about it, probably even more in the future, because it came out. They made no promotional trailers before, no ads, nothing. They just literally dumped it on Hulu. And at the moment, it has a 37% Rotten score.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
Yeah, not bad. Well, my first comment is looking at the trailer, and once I saw it on Hulu, I was like, okay, maybe I'll get an idea of what it's about. I watched the trailer, and there's probably 2 minutes of the most random scene. I thought it was like, is this from like the movie? Is this like a clip from? I have no idea what this is about. And it wasn't until I went to IMDb that I actually got an idea about the actual synopsis of the movie. You think maybe it's the trailer?
So what is it?
I guess the actress in the movie, I would butcher her name right now because
Ana de Armas.
There you go. She is, I guess, she cheats on her husband, Ben Affleck, and with multiple men, and to keep things alive or keep their marriage alive, I guess he lets her do it. Mm-hmm. And then somebody dies, and that's the movie, them trying to figure something out along those lines. But you watch the trailer, no idea. That's not the reason why I bring it up. My question for you, Ronald, is if we look at how this kind of played out, no marketing materials, weirdest trailer I've ever seen, only synopsis on IMDb. If a studio thinks that a movie is going to flop or that they're not going to make really any money off it, do you think they're going to kind of do this in the future, or they just kind of just dump it on a streaming service?
Yeah, basically what you do is you shop it around, and anybody willing to pay budget or maybe a little more or just close to it, you'll give it away in order to not have to pay money to advertise it. I think I've discussed on here, usually in general for big budget movies, the marketing department gets about the same amount of budget as the actual production department. So for instance, like Infinity War and Endgame both cost about $300 million a piece to make. So they marketed them for more than that, because that's how you get something to be the biggest movie in the world. You market the shit out of it. So if those movies weren't billion-dollar movies, they would have lost money, even though the budget was only 300. So say for a movie like this, maybe the budget's $25 million. They probably sold it to Hulu for like 18, just because they're like, we just got to get this off our hands, because it's going to cost us another $20 million to tell anybody to see it. And then they won't, and then we'll lose the money anyway. I heard this movie was like a sexy thriller kind of thing, kind of like Cruel Intentions or one of those movies.
I couldn't even tell you. We're seeing the trailer, but that's interesting, the whole marketing aspect, because over the weekend I watched one of those 10 biggest flops of all time, and a movie that I've probably seen like 5, 6 times, and I know it's bad, but John Carter is considered the biggest flop of all time. And yeah, a piece of that is the marketing, how much they paid to market it on top of the production cost, the marketing for it. And then it was a humongous flop at the box office. So I think they lost around $100 million on that. And I think somebody had to step down after from Disney. So classic. Interesting stuff. Yeah. Well, I think it's, it had potential, but I don't think we're going to be talking about that. Let's talk about something else that we both like. We both enjoy a good TC, a good Tom Cruise movie.
TC Tuckers.
Yes.
Keeps your shirt from getting stuck on your belly button, and you don't get that weird, ugly line from pulling on it. It's just a little, it's a regular t-shirt, but it's got a little tug top invented in the middle, and you just pull on that to keep your t-shirt from getting bunched up on your belly button. TC Tuckers.
Well, not only does Tom Cruise run insanely fast in movies.
Yeah, he does.
But he puts butts in the seats, as we joke about. And he's somebody that I and Ronald enjoy seeing. We enjoy watching movies from him. Well, they recently released a new trailer for Top Gun. It got me a little excited just because I liked the first Top Gun. And it's probably going to have a lot of little fan payoff with the roles in it and the story of it. And
I'll definitely have to watch the first Top Gun.
Never seen it.
Never seen it. I know it's very sexy when they get on the beach. A fun story about Tom Cruise's action shenanigans. My wife was actually explaining this to me based off of a podcast she listens to called You're Wrong About. And basically they talk about like popular just news stories or stuff that's always in the zeitgeist, but people tend to not know much beyond the surface. And they were discussing Tom Cruise jumping on the couch. And I guess the whole thing was kind of like this big misunderstanding in that he and Oprah Winfrey were very close personal friends. So what she would, when they talk about stuff, they would always say like, oh, the most excited you get is jumping on the couch excited. So she would ask him about stuff and he'd be like, I'm excited, but not jumping on the couch excited. Well, for this particular thing, she was asking, are you going to ask Katie Holmes to marry you? And he said, I don't know. She's like, well, is there any, it was basically, she was like, are you excited about Katie Holmes? And he just jumped on the couch. He's like, this is how excited, like as an inside joke to a friend. And the whole audience in that episode was a Tom Cruise superfan audience. So everybody that was there was gassing him up. So he jumped on the couch. Everyone like flipped out because they're talking about his love life. It's all super fans. And so they all kind of fed on it. And he did it purposely as an exaggerated expression of his enthusiasm for the relationship and his career. And she kind of played it up because they were friends. And then in the media, it was taken a little out of context and it just made him look even crazier than he probably is. So because of that, though, that is about the time that he shifted away from doing movies like Eyes Wide Shut and doing like more, romantic movies, comedy movies. He really narrowed his focus of what type of movie he does. And now he almost strictly does action movies. And the reason being is because he no longer has to do those pressers anymore, where you do the big action movie. You can market it by showing the stunt and talking about the stunt and talking to other actors about how intense the stunt was. And he doesn't have to be out there in his personal life anymore. So they credit that moment with part of the reason he got even more deeply entrenched into the Church of Scientology, because David Miscavige, who was one of his close friends, was there for him and kind of brought him in deeper and said, oh, we'll protect your personal life. You won't be ridiculed like that anymore. People won't embarrass you. And that's kind of where his current persona came from. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, the whole Scientology thing, I didn't know where you're going to throw it in there. So
You're just
maybe
waiting for it.
maybe we'll include that in a future episode. But
Yeah,
I'm going to get back to my question for you because we're going to tie in another podcast to this. But first, got to give our shout outs to TC for just being an insane animal. He's a freak that he's flying outside of airplanes. He's jumping across buildings outside of the largest building, climbing it.
Mhm.
And flying helicopters. And it's one of those things where he literally pushes the bar so far.
He's going to outer
action.
space for a movie in like 2 years when he'll be 63 years old.
Yeah, well, that's my question for you. How far do you think he can push this action bar?
I literally not joking. I think his plan is to die on a movie set.
Okay.
I'm not joking. I think maybe
that's a bar.
Yeah, I think that perhaps, like I said, because of what happened, he's like, I don't think my personal life is just kind of, it's hard to manage now with being this famous and being so deeply into the Church of Scientology, where I know there's a lot of rules and stuff. And maybe he decided movies matter the most to me about anything. And if I, to quote that viral Instagram fitness thing, if I die, I die. And then you get under the bar, bench 500 for the first time, no spotter.
Okay.
What else we got, big guy?
Well, there's just one more piece of that I want to throw in there because with action movies, and we kind of talked about this when we talked about The Matrix, was how in The Matrix, we didn't see anything new. With Marvel movies, DC movies, we see a lot of great action. And yet Tom Cruise keeps pushing out movies that are entertaining. And the action in them is worth going to go watch. Some of them, the story doesn't quite click. I'm talking about the attempts with the Mummy reboot, but with, Mission Impossible, huge movies, and he's getting more and more of those. So I think that he does stuff that people want to see and doesn't just retread on stuff like how The Matrix did. So that's my little piece on that. But
all right.
Yeah, well, I'm going to move on to the next piece here. And there was a headline for MovieWeb about if Daniel Radcliffe will shed his Harry Potter stigma with the latest release of Lost City. Now, I've seen a handful of movies with him since Harry Potter and been in an assortment of roles. I think I saw one where he was playing like an FBI or CIA operative going undercover with the Klan, and he was trying to find a bomb.
Yeah. Did you see the one where he played a dead body?
I didn't see that one. I know which one you're talking about.
Swiss Army Man's a great movie.
I saw he was in a rom-com that I like that you can always watch on Amazon Prime. And so he's doing other roles. And my question for you isn't if Daniel Radcliffe will always be Harry Potter, because I don't even think you've even watched those. But who is your favorite typecasted actor?
I think if we think of actors who've been typecast, it's one word. Yeah, the ones that come to mind are the two biggest actors in the world right now, and that's Dwayne the Magic Johnson and Ryan Reynolds rap. Those guys are typecast in that they only play themselves, and people love it.
Yeah.
And I think there are times where being typecast can be a negative, but for actors like that, what they've done is typecast themselves kind of on purpose in order to create a brand. So even when The Rock or Ryan Reynolds is in an original film, like we'll talk about later, it still almost functions like an IP, right? It almost functions like a sequel to a Marvel movie because you understand what you're getting with the Ryan Reynolds brand or with the Dwayne the Magic Johnson brand, in that you know what kind of character they're going to be, you know what kind of fun or what kind of action or what type of humor you can expect. And with that, the built-in audience will come with them because they've turned themselves or their personality into a brand as opposed to a really more of a vessel for the story, as some actors become. So that's my answer.
It's a good one. It is a good one. I think I talked about this in Red Notice that I'm not always the biggest fan of Ryan Reynolds. I liked when he was in the rom-coms, but now with...
Oh, I love Just Friends. I really like Definitely Maybe, one of my favorite movies.
Classics.
Dude, The Proposal. Hello. The year the proposal came out, he won People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive, and he was on the cover with little floaties and goggles, and he was holding a squirt gun. So,
well, he definitely now plays himself, which I guess I'm just not the biggest fan of it.
But he also did that in those movies.
Yeah, I guess you can see it.
Yeah.
Maybe tamer versions of it, but we'll talk more about Ryan Reynolds later on. With this next piece here, a new trailer came out for season 4, part 2 of Ozarks. And they split them in half, season 4 into 2 parts. And it's pretty, it's a pretty well-respected show. I enjoy it. I think it's top quality in terms of the story, how it's filmed. And something unique that I saw during the first season was how much Jason Bateman was actually directing it as well. Yeah. He was acting, directing, and he actually won an Emmy for it. And my question for you, Ronald, is do you have a favorite actor that is multi-talented, so maybe can produce or maybe can write at the same time?
Yeah. It's weird that you would even have to ask. Can you guess?
I have one in my mind, but
guess. I want you to guess.
I'm going to throw Bo Burnham out there.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I wouldn't really consider him an actor as much as he's a comedian that does a little acting. But mine would be Donald Glover.
I don't think I would have guessed that, but I can. Now that you said it, though, I can see it though.
Right, he writes and produces the show Atlanta. Obviously, he writes and performs all his music. He sings on it. He raps on it. He dances on it. He had, I think, 2 episodes done of an animated R-rated Deadpool TV show that was going to be on FXX. That ended up getting canceled because of the Marvel Fox merger. He's the Prowler in Spider-Man Homecoming. He is freaking Lando Calrissian. The guy does it all. He was a model for the Gap for a long time. Number 1 big time best guy.
Did you ever see Solo? Now that you mention it, or you still?
Tyler,
did we watch it at my
house? I fucking watched it at your house.
That's right. Had to pull the old rope-a-dope on you on that one. Hey, Ronald, come over, hang out.
Come over. There's gonna be hot chicken. I get there. It's chicken on the bone, which doesn't count. I don't want fried chicken on the bone. What do I look like? A dog? And then we had to watch Solo. Ugh.
I know you're actually going to enjoy this second question. And it's not really a question. It's more you're just talking about character that you like. Well, piece of news here. Sharon Stone has been tapped to play villain Victoria Cord in DC's upcoming Blue Beetle, which is...
Oh, I didn't know that's who she's playing.
Yes, well, it's the first superhero movie for our listeners starring a Latino character, which Ron talked about with representation.
Starring Xolo Maridonia.
Or can you give listeners a quick rundown of this superhero character?
So, ostensibly, Blue Beetle is kind of like an Iron Man / Venom combo character because, well, this particular Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes, is a young Tejano man. I believe he's in like foster care. It varies from iteration to iteration. But he finds this alien scarab. Funny story, I actually wrote a spec outline for this. There's no one for me to send it to, but I thought it was a good story idea. Anyway, he finds this alien scarab that fuses itself to his spine. And once he becomes able to control it, it forms an alien kind of like symbiotic armor around his body that can produce cannons and fly. And it's basically like the Mark 60 Iron Man suit, but it grows out of his body and it's an organic thing and it fights him for control. And the reason I was interested in the Victoria Cord thing, I don't know enough about Ted Cord to figure out their relation. I could just Google it. But Ted Cord is actually the original Blue Beetle. Jaime Reyes is the second. And another funny story, the Blue Beetle is the character upon which Night Owl is based in Watchmen. In the early 80s, when DC acquired Charlton Comics, Alan Moore decided to make the Watchmen storyline using a bunch of their characters. And so he wrote it, and then DC said, "This is a great story. Don't do that. We can't use these characters if you do this to them." So he made his own versions.
Cool. Good backstory there. Good for the listeners and myself, not knowing much about this character. But I knew, seeing this headline, that you would enjoy it and you would enjoy talking about it.
Yeah, so. And it's really cool. The director, I forget his real name, but his name on Instagram is Aloe Hemingway, but that's not his real name. But he's a Puerto Rican guy. And they're filming it all in Puerto Rico to bring jobs back there. And it's really cool. The cast, I know it has like George Lopez is in it. It's a mostly Latino cast. I cannot wait for this movie. And I just wish there was somehow I could have gotten in it, but I think it's too late because they're making it.
I was making a joke that you're not going to fly down there and just go try to run on set. Hey, like here's,
you know what?
I can be in this.
I could do that.
Well, next question for you that I think you'll like as well because you like this genre of film. But according to Variety, a prequel to It is in development at HBO Max.
Ooh.
The series
is it going to be called That?
The series, currently called Welcome to Derry, will begin in the 1960s, in the time leading up to the events of part one of it. It said that the story is also said to include the origin of Pennywise, the clown, and the director from the reboot is said to be the executive producer for it. My question for you, with horror films, what do you think the kind of mixture that gets fans to come back? Seeing, I know you watched Scream recently. I think you watched a handful of other horror films in the last few months because you enjoy those. What do you think that magic mix is for the reboots?
I feel like it's just like any reboot where you have to have a very thorough understanding of what made the original special. I think it's where people get into trouble. They'll remake or they'll reboot movies that are essentially ripoffs of other movies from the time. And so there was nothing that made it special other than riding a wave. So when you reboot something that was riding a wave of the time and it's not riding that wave now, it tends to fall flat. So one thing about the It story is I feel like the second part kind of ended up not living up to the first part. And a lot of it was because the lack of the kids. So I think for this to make it more successful or make it more resonant would be to keep more of the focus on the younger side. Because, when they're fighting Pennywise the first time, they beat him by hitting him with like bats and yelling at him, right? So once they're adults, it's like, why don't they just do that?
Okay. I didn't see the reboot, and I can't remember when I watched the original the first time. So I'll just take your word on it. But that's all I got for you, Ronald.
Okay. So I do have a couple of pieces of news, but before I move on, it's interesting that they're working with the director from the first two. It's Andy Muschietti. And it's HBO Max because Andy Muschietti is directing the Flash movie, which reportedly exists. That's another one of those movies. It's Schrodinger's movie at this point. You open the box, it could exist. You open the box, it could not exist. But so they must really like what he did if they're going to be, obviously they're bringing him on for the Flash and they're having him do this probably as a way to lock him into a development contract. So he's only working with Warner Brothers. So that's probably a good sign for the Flash movie for anybody else that's extrapolating data like that, like I am.
Yes.
Okay.
Continue.
So my piece of news, and I think it shouldn't be called a piece. It's like a chunk of news. This is the biggest thing. When you talked about earlier, when you said this is the thing everyone's talking about, and I was like, oh, he's going to be talking about, you stole my news. And then you said the thing about the Oscars. I'm like, what? Who's Will Smith? What are the Oscars? What I was thinking about, the thing all of us are thinking about is how horny Pusha T is for Arbys right now. And what I mean is Pusha T, the rapper of half of the Clips, he used to work with McDonald's. In fact, he claims that he created the ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm loving it slogan. Well, he's been poached by non-competitor because they barely exist, Arbys. And he and Arbys, they did a X collab, right? And he put out a diss track from Arbys to McDonald's, shitting all over the McDonald's Filet-O-Fish sandwich. And it's like a pretty good verse. But it's crazy. It's from Arbys to McDonald's, just straight up diss. The song starts where he's like, I'm the reason why the whole world love it, but now I gotta crush it. And he just shits on it. He's like, your sandwich is fucking stupid. I can't believe the fish is square. You got half a piece of cheese. Freaking Arbys is the best. It's insane, and I love it. And I'm also now horny for Arbys.
I'm guessing you don't have a question for me with this.
I was going to say, Tyler, how horny are you for Arbys on a scale of flaccid to throbbingly erect?
Extremely flaccid.
What?
Saying that
I've never had Arbys, but now I'm going to. I'm literally going on Friday because, as everyone knows, it is Lent, and you're not supposed to eat meat on Fridays. And I did forget.
I think I've been to an Arbys once, and
was it an accident?
No, it was because where my mom lives, in a random ass town in Wyoming. There's not many options. And I think it's actually, what's the knockoff version of Arbys? Hardee's. There's actually a Hardee's.
I thought Hardee's was knockoff Carl's Jr.
Someone will need to check that for us.
So I think you didn't even go to an Arbys, dude. You went to knockoff Carl's Jr. Classic. All right. And speaking of laughing maniacally, we discussed this on our review of The Batman, but Matt Reeves has released his extended Joker scene that we talked about. Did you watch it? Do you have any thoughts? Do you agree with what I talked about Chekhov's Joker?
Well, you know that I watched it because I sent you the link.
You did.
In a text message.
You did, in fact, but this is for the listeners.
Okay. So I did watch it. I sent it to quite a few people, and I thought it was interesting, but a good piece to talk about for the podcast is how Ronald did point out, I know he enjoys getting the credit when it's due, is he pointed out when we had our Big Batman episode that having that clip earlier in the movie definitely would have overshadowed the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That you definitely would have been thinking about, holy crap, that Joker scene. Oh my goodness. Did you see his face at the end? Did you see how he looked? Oh, I wonder what this backstory is. You would have been thinking about that the whole time. So Ronald was definitely correct with that analysis of it. I thought that it was interesting, and I will comment on how he looks. That is what is most intriguing to me. He definitely looks the most, I don't know what the best adjective for it, villainous. He looks the most distorted with his face. So his backstory and how he came to look that way, why he's in Arkham, all those things are very fascinating to me.
Yeah, they really went the opposite way of like the beautiful, like ivory white Jared Leto with like his cool haircut and like stylish clothes. This one is very markedly disfigured. But yeah, I'm glad you agree. I think not only would it have distracted you thinking about it, but the beginning half of the movie is so perfectly paced that I feel like that would have kind of ground everything to a halt.
Yeah.
And then
definitely.
You'd still go on and be like, wow, what's going on? I do appreciate the allusions to the fact that canonically Joker is usually Batman's first major supervillain. So right after, just like in Batman Begins, where right after he takes down these crime bosses, the Joker starts showing up kind of as a response to him, it seems like. Because in most of the backstories, the reason the Joker even exists is in Batman's early days thwarting mob families. He stops a robbery at the Ace chemical plant, and one of the robbers, usually the Red Hood, who in fact is a red herring that the mafia uses to make it look like they have a leader, but they literally just put some guy in this outfit. Well, the Red Hood falls into a vat of chemicals at Ace Chemicals, which permanently bleaches his face in full body white, and the same bleach turns his brown hair green. And in that moment, it kind of distorts his mind, and he comes out on the other side of the Joker. So it's kind of fun to see that has happened off screen. It's nice to see the larger universe does exist. But also, I do like that it's released as a deleted scene, so it's not canonical yet. They can still, like we talked about in pitching other villains and stuff, they can still change the actor. They have room to change his look. They didn't show him that well. They could change it, and that wasn't the Joker. That was a guy who maybe, was one of his acolytes or something. There's still a lot of room. So it's good they didn't put in anything that was super clear or super definitive, because you never know. Matt Reeves might get hit with a stroke of absolute like creative genius, and like, I got to use a different version of Joker, and it's nice they still have that flexibility. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Well, good segment piece to our segment of this podcast episode, which we will continue to ride the Batman wave, as we just talked about.
I think what Tyler meant to say was great transition to the next segment. We're going to continue to ride the Batman's nuts with our next portion of the podcast, where Tyler, pick it up.
So we will have our segment called The Battle of the Batmans.
Ooh.
And I know that if you listen to our 2 episodes, actually, with Ronald doing his back day episode, all talking about Batman. We had our full episode on Batman, the Batman, which, if I am correct in terms of some rumor that I heard, potentially coming out in the next 2.5 weeks on HBO Max. So you'll get a chance to watch it, not in theater.
Now, do we think sequels of The Batman are going to get less definitive? Like, it goes from The Batman to a Batman to some Batman, and then like there'll be Robins and stuff? Just think about it. Don't answer. Just think about it and move on.
And moving on with that, we have the Battle of the Batmans, where we are going to pit Bale versus Keaton versus Pattinson. And to make it fun, we're going to be talking about, I guess, 7 items here. There were 6. Ronald had to put in something else in it. So we have 7 items that we're going to talk about, where we will place Bale, Keaton, or Pattinson in these in terms of how we think that Batman did in those. So one little item to add to it is that both of us will have one, we'll call it a whammy, where we can throw in a Clooney or a Kilmer. And
now, if anybody thinks for a second I'm going to listen to those rules, you just hang up the phone right now, because you're going to have to call 911, because you're certifiable. All right, let's
He's
go.
gonna put Clooney for all of them. So our first one to talk about is which Batman had the better gadgets. Ronald, Go ahead first.
All right, I can tell you which Batman had the worst gadgets.
Let's hear that.
Christian Bale had the worst gadgets.
Oh, don't do that to
the
me.
tumbler was ugly. I get
You're
it.
ugly.
I you know what? I'm not. I thought the bat looked like this freaking horrendous tetrahedron nightmare. Michael Keaton's gadgets were cool, but they all looked like, when you make a toy model toy kit and they have that little edge from where the mold didn't quite fit right and nobody cuts it off because you're a kid. All of them look like that. And they're so like plainly bright yellow. I thought Pattinson's were cool, but they're still in development. So I'd have to give it to Ben Affleck.
Okay. That wasn't even one of the choices.
Go ahead.
So
go
already,
on.
as you thought, for the listeners, if you thought that Ronald would be playing by the rules, obviously not.
Yeah.
My pick is Bale. I think one of the more fascinating scenes that I think I was just blown away with was in The Dark Knight, wherein he reassembled the bullet for the thumbprint to then figure out where the person was located. I mean, that was something fascinating for the time being. And
yeah, that was cool to see him actually do some detectiving.
Yes.
It was magic, but it was also detectiving.
But his use of gadgets, probably the reason why Ronald is not as happy with it is I don't think he uses as many. I would probably say that. I think
Wait, does headbutting count as a gadget? Because he uses that gadget way too damn much.
Ronald, this is supposed to be my turn talking about my reason why I liked Bale.
I am talking about your reason.
You're supposed to be being quiet during this part of it.
Good luck with that, big guy.
So my vote is actually Bale, but okay. I'm going to continue on with this to number 2, the Batsuit.
Do you want me to go first? Because you're going to regret it.
I'm actually going to go. Okay. I'm going to go first.
Yeah, you should.
You should. Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, my vote for this one is actually Batsuit. I thought, and as we talked about in that episode with the Batsuit, I just like the practicality of it. Mm-hmm. I do kind of, thinking about it now, think it's kind of bulky, but I know that Farm will probably say that about Bale's outfit, but the practicality of it, I liked the Batsuit, the logo and how he could pull it out, use it for cutting, use it for practical purposes. But I know it's actually something that's going to be evolving too. I like that aspect of it. Now he evolves, even though Christian Bale did evolve his suit with the help of Lucius Fox, but that's actually my favorite at the time. Ronald?
Cool. I'm very surprised by that. Yeah, I really like Pattinson's too. I'm not telling you that's my favorite one, but I liked it too. I actually like that was bulky. I prefer my Batsuits bulky. That's why actually Christian Bale's Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises suits are my least favorite Batman suits, because they're kind of skinny. He's not in the second and third one. He's very fit, but he's not a very he's pretty skinny coming off of playing Dickie Eklund and playing some of his other roles. And he stayed kind of thin. And with that small suit, he doesn't look intimidating. And Robert Pattinson's a little taller, but he's quite a pretty thin guy. He's felt like most actors are. So the bulky suit, I feel like, really gives him that menace that you need out of Batman. Michael Keaton suits I thought were good for the time, but again, watching them now, it's like they're well designed, but they're so simple,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
for the time being,
but you look at it now,
nipples,
there's like a little chest piece, but then the arms are just spandex. It's just it feels like they didn't finish it. Mm-hmm. I thought Clooney and Kilmer actually had a good evolution of those, and they were cartoony, but they were fun. But I got to say, my favorite one was Ben Affleck's, because I like a bulky Batman. He's always drawn as this freaking tank of a guy. I did think the neck was way too thick on the first one, and then the cowl was way too angular on the second and third ones he has. But I thought the body and the color and the shape, and because it's designed after, as I talked about before, the Jim Lee Hush design, except for they've swapped the navy blue for black, and that is my favorite Batman design. So that's why that one's my favorite.
Okay, well, one piece I want to throw in there, because I thought it was pretty interesting in the documentary that I watched about Val Kilmer when he was talking about being Batman, and I know there was a lot of drama around the whole time, and that led to Clooney taking up the mantle for the next one for Batman and Robin. And one of the pieces that he talked about in it was that he felt like he couldn't act because he couldn't hear anything, and he would make complaints about it, that his ears being covered was almost like wearing muffled, like his ears were muffled in the
makes
suit.
sense. Yeah.
So he couldn't really react to timing purposes, or when somebody would respond to him or try to keep dialogue going. It was very hard for him to do it. So he would be very agitated with it, and probably why he didn't get along with Schumacher with it. And I'm sure that led to a lot of other bits of drama, but that was something interesting I thought about it. I know that him being kind of a method actor, being very he takes his roles. Yeah, that's the best way. He's very intense.
Yeah,
that's the nicest way to say it. It makes sense in his mind, and when you say it out loud, it does too.
And you know what's funny? That actually connects to your favorite Batman series with Christian Bale. He had mentioned the same thing about the original cowl. You know, I actually really like the Batman Begins suit because it is that bulkier one. But he had mentioned that he couldn't hear out of it, and that because it was so heavy, his head was kind of still. He couldn't hear, and he was sweating. So he said he'd have migraines all day, pretty much every day. And his solution was, he's like, well, Batman's supposed to be really mad. He's like, so it helps me be in character, just be so, he said he was just so angry every time he was in that suit because it was so uncomfortable.
I think the bad part is that I could see that. I'd be so scared of Christian Bale on set if I worked in that industry.
Yeah, especially if you worked with him and you weren't somebody with like equal stature, where if like you got in an argument, like he gets you fired and you could never get a job again.
The best would probably be Christian Bale and Tom Cruise on a set. And somebody gets in trouble, then just watching both of them, just choose them out. That'd be something to sit back and watch.
Who do you think wins in an argument out of those two?
Oh, I feel like it'd be Christian Bale. I mean, Tom Cruise.
Only one of them has magical powers, though.
Well, let's get off this tangent and go back to our segment.
So
next one.
Tyler
Batmobile
concedes victory to me.
Yeah, I'm going to continue talking first because I don't want to hear Ronald talk about all 5 of them, which he probably will. But I'm actually going to give it to Christian Bale on this one again. And of course, I have my bias with it, which I admit.
Boo! Get off the stage! Oh my God, they're throwing tomatoes at you.
I honestly remember sitting in a theater for The Dark Knight, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, that there's only 2 movies that I've seen twice in the theater. I just don't usually go twice to go see it. It was The Dark Knight, and that was because my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she was out of the country, and I had to go see it. So I went and saw it by myself, and then we saw Infinity War twice.
Ooh.
So, or was it Endgame? No, it was Endgame that we saw twice in the theater.
Ooh.
So with the Batmobile Dark Knight, when it went from the tumbler to the, what is the motorcycle called? The Bat Pod. Oh my goodness. I remember the theater just erupting, just going wild with it. And I remember myself being super quiet because I was seeing a movie by myself and I felt super awkward. So I didn't want somebody to think, who's this weirdo by himself? But I wanted to, just deep inside, I was just cheering. So excited when that happened.
You got to be more confident, Valencia.
Yeah. Being an awkward weirdo in the public is not one of my usual things. It took me a long time to actually start eating lunch by myself.
Wow,
I would ever
dude.
go out.
I love eating lunch for myself, and you make eye contact with everybody you can.
Yeah, I bet you do. I know you. I know what you do. You honestly sit on your phone and just scroll through stuff when you eat lunch. So don't even try and play that off. What's your vote?
I do make eye contact with people, and I'll talk to strangers just to bother them. I only do it for my entertainment, never for theirs. So my favorite Batmobile, honestly, it's going to be a surprise to you, but it's the Batman Returns Batmobile. When it has that weird armor that comes over it when the Penguin tries to hijack it and stuff, that's the Batmobile to me. Probably in number 2, I really like Pattinson's just because I love classic muscle cars, and it just kind of looks like a early 70s Challenger. And it's
Is that why you have a Camry?
Pretty rad. I don't have a Camry, dude. I have a Linda with a Y. Okay, so what's up next?
Well, just talking, because I know I made a joke in the Batman episode that we filmed about how Gordon would just flash on a screen. And I remember I was watching, was it Batman Returns? Or it was Forever. When, no, was it? It was Batman and Robin. It was definitely Batman and Robin.
Oh yeah, where he just
driving down
the FaceTime.
Yeah, it's literally just this small little screen just flies in, and I was like, "What the who made that? But anyways, support system is our next one. So Gordon, I was going to say Commissioner Gordon, but Gordon, Fox, Alfred, who, in your opinion, has the best support?
Well, for me, it kind of depends on the era of Batman too. I feel like early days Batman, I didn't like that about Batman Begins, that he got all of his tech, like somebody else had invented it and he kind of found it. And he was stealing it from the company, because I feel like it takes away a lot of what makes him Batman. Like I talked about in my Back Day episode 3, where I go all on about Batman and what he means to me and what makes him my favorite fictional character. Well, I feel like that takes a lot away from him by not having him create and, design and reiterate these things by himself. So I really like that about the Pattinson ones. We saw him tinkering and building this by himself. Like Alfred has his back, but more in that he kind of brings him sandwiches. He brings them sandwiches and cufflinks, but he's not down there building stuff for him. And even like in the Ben Affleck ones, he had cool gadgets, but Alfred was building them. He was building the mech suits when Bruce wasn't there. And so I feel like having him have too much help in some aspects takes away from what the character's supposed to be. Now, down the line, when he has Robins and stuff, obviously he's supposed to have a crew, but the idea is that Batman is kind of this one-man army with a couple of associates. So I would say the person that did that best was probably the Keaton, which is Clooney and Kilmer, because that Alfred just brings sandwiches. That guy could barely walk down the stairs. And Commissioner Gordon's not in those movies. He just calls on FaceTime, and there is no Lucius Fox in those movies. So I feel like
Skype at the time.
Yeah, so I think the Keaton universe, which again is Clooney and Kilmer, are sequels to those two movies. I feel like he does it the best because his Alfred is barely not a paraplegic. So he's not building freaking mech suits for him. And then Gordon is some old man on FaceTime, and Fox doesn't exist. So that's my answer.
I'm actually going to give this one to Pattinson, and I'm sure it'll actually grow even further, because that was actually one of the points that I made walking out, talking to my wife when we're just talking about the movie, was that I'm excited to see Alfred, Andy Serkis, and that role further down the line, how that expands more. I mean, just because, the one scene when they're in the hospital and you see the emotion, you see why Andy Serkis is such a good actor, the tears coming out, and the backstory, which a lot of people are making guesses about the differences in the backstory compared to other Alfreds, which is going to be exciting to uncover. But I also really enjoyed the bond or the established relationship with Gordon, how they work together. You kind of see it in the Bale and the trilogy that, Commissioner Lieutenant Gordon, and he's letting him into crime scenes, but it's a little, you really don't see too much of them interacting. There's scenes here and there, but not like with the Pattinson and the Batman. So that's why I give it to him. I know maybe we'll see if there's going to be a Fox in this trilogy, but the way that it's starting off, I like that support that he had, and it's going to be interesting to see how they build it up more.
I agree. I like how we both answered for opposite reasons. Like he had the best support team, and I was like, he has the least. I like it better. But no, I agree. I agree with everything you said there. And so what's our next category?
It's actually going to be an interesting one, because some of these, the last two are filmed in multiple locations, but it's going to be Gotham. Who has the best Gotham? Ronald.
So I can tell you my bottom tier ones are going to be Bale and Affleck, because they both, Bale's is very clearly just Chicago and Pittsburgh. Like it just looks like any town. And then freaking Ben Affleck's, it doesn't even look like any town. It just looks like every town. It looks like a CW show where they film freaking in Ontario, Canada. So everything has the same 5 buildings. That's how that Gotham looked like. There was no distinguishing factors to make either of those places Gotham. I like Michael Keaton's. I like that anachronistic Gothic nightmare they lived in, which came into the Clooney and Kilmer's one that kept getting taller buildings that were like, looks like thousands of feet tall, right? Those buildings, they had statues on top of 80-story buildings. I thought it was insane. I love the way they look. I thought it was crazy, but I don't think it really felt like Gotham, especially by the Clooney and Kilmer ones. It looked like a weird nightmare kid painting thing. So I got to give it to Pattinson for blending the Keaton and like a real life version. And I think where they filmed it at, they filmed it like in Scotland and a couple other places. And then, they filmed it like all over places in Europe. So it wasn't and they were small towns. So it wasn't places that you could recognize, right? And then they augmented all of the skylines. Like if you look at the set photos, they weren't in like big downtown metropolis areas. So they use like those Gothic, streets that are really from the 1500s with all those statues and all that crazy, like intricate architecture. And then they augmented it with these really high tech, almost Tokyo-esque skyscrapers covered in neon lights. And it created, again, that Gotham hellscape that you see in the comic books. That's just a place that I don't know why anybody lives there. The rent's got to be so cheap because everyone's just constantly getting burglarized and assaulted.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was funny talking about it with Affleck is not even one of the choices, but of course you got to throw him in there. My actual vote is not so much of the best because, of course, we're talking about best and how much the background, locations, how well they look. I'm going to go with either a Bale or a Pattinson, but I'm actually going to give it. I'm going to use my whammy and give it to Kilmer, and because growing up, I didn't own the first two. I only owned Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. So those were the two VHSs that I watched the shit out of. Yeah. So, I mean, just the stupid scene when, remember Batman and Robin, when they jump out after they explode that.
Oh my God. And there's that incredibly tall, like I said, 1,000-foot tall statue on top of a 1,000-foot tall building.
They're just surfing, quote unquote, surfing down. And oh my goodness.
Well, remember the scene in Forever when Jim Carrey pushes his boss out of the window, and it turns out that the Wayne Foundation laboratory
sewers?
It was on top of a freaking working dam for no reason.
Yeah.
And it was like the world's largest dam. So how do you get in and out of work if you're in a dam? Like, and why are they doing R&D for like toys in a dam? It's incredible. But that's why I was like, that one's cool, but it just doesn't make any sense.
It's just so fictitious and so like you can't place it anywhere, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I mean, just everything being so exaggerated that it almost built in your head, like, oh wow, like it's just a really dark, really like bad place to live. That's why they need Batman. And I mean, there's so many scenes going through my head that we could talk about, but that's going to be my vote, more based off of childhood memories. But
yeah, I feel
we're going to go on with the next one, which is an interesting one because Pattinson, still expanding. We're only in episode 1 here. We're only in part 1 here with
he did get 4 villains of 5.
Yeah, he did. But it's villains. Who is your vote for villains?
I vote the Keaton, Clooney, Kilmer universe because they got the most villains. Right? Because they had what? Joker,
Riddler,
Catwoman, Penguin, Two-Face, Bane, Ivy, what's his name? Mr. Freeze. So they got 8. That's a pretty good amount. Although I feel like they should have gotten more in 4 movies,
Yeah. Oh man, the scene when they create Bane is just going through my head now. Oh, and what is the line that she says to him when he slaps his chest for him to act? It's on his chest, like the
weird
juice button. Yeah, whatever they call it. But anyways,
you know what we didn't talk about is when we discussed Bane. I forgot to bring it up, but at the end of the Batman, when he gets hit in the chest with that 12 gauge from up close. Mm-hmm. He's lying on the ground and he needs to recover himself. He grabs a vial, shoots himself in the thigh, right? And people are like, oh, it's adrenaline. It was very clearly glowing bright green. Adrenaline doesn't glow bright green. They don't make shit that glows bright green for hospitals. But you know what does glow bright green is venom, which Bane uses to become the giant Bane. And canonically in the stories, before Bane showed up, there was a whole plot line for months on end in which Batman became addicted to venom. He actually created it to help him with his war on crime so he could be stronger and faster and recover more quickly. But because it was so adrenaline sapping, it started to have basically roid rage where he was like losing control of himself and he wasn't sleeping. So he stops using it. And then like a year later, Bane shows up using it kind of as a dark mirror to what he had gone through. But I thought that was really interesting because they're hinting at Bane with that because there's no freaking way that's supposed to be regular adrenaline when it's glowing green.
Interesting point there, Ronald. I'm going to give it to my vote to probably Clooney. And I know I said one whammy, but Ronald breaks all the rules with every segment that we do.
You know why? Because I'm a bad boy for life.
But that was always probably my favorite, and probably more because my favorite character is actually Robin, more than Batman. Mostly because my favorite color is green, and that's a child's mind right there. Is that you pick whatever superhero you like based off the color that you like.
Absolutely.
So
which Robin is your favorite?
I had I'm talking about action figures. I had two Robins, and one had like a black and like yellow suit. So like one was like sometimes the bad Robin, sometimes the more original Robin was the good one, back and forth. But were
you like a Dick, a Tim, Jason, Carrie, Stephanie, or Damien?
See, with it, and this was before Grayson became such a popular name, but I always said that I wanted to name my first son, Grayson.
Nice.
Now everybody uses that name, Grayson.
Yeah.
And so I can't anymore. I got to find something more original. But that answers your question there.
Yeah.
But
anyways, I like it.
With this next one, I didn't really talk about villains, but we got to move on to our next one here. And Ronald's actually going to lead us into it.
So Tyler had listed 6, and I gave it a whammy, and I added a 7th. So we're going to talk about which of the Batman has the better large universe, or like the more rich expanded universe. So of the options, Tyler, who do you go with?
You only put this one in there so you could talk about Ben Affleck. Now that I thought about it more, now that I see that you're going to throw Affleck in this, that's why you put it in there.
I have an entirely different thing I'm going to talk about, but go ahead.
Oh.
So Tyler assumes that there is only one Batman with a confirmed extended universe featuring other heroes, right? He thinks it's just Ben Affleck. But at the beginning of Batman and Robin are arguing about who gets to drive the car. And George Clooney goes, "This is why Superman works alone," confirming Superman exists in the George Clooney, Val Kilmer, and Michael Keaton universe because it's all one universe. So that is my pick for universe.
Because of one line?
Yeah, well, it confirms he exists. So they have a Superman. And in my mind, it's the Nicolas Cage Superman because Tim Burton was writing and directing that. So it would have been the same Superman. Oh man, I forgot to talk about this news. I'm going to throw this in now. Speaking of Nicolas Cage Superman, he was doing, the like GQ, go undercover online, answer questions, things they do.
Mm-hmm.
So he was doing one of those, and somebody said, today I learned that there was a Superman movie with Nicolas Cage, and here's photos of it. Oh my God, I wish we could get that. And Nicolas Cage went, "Well, does it matter to you how much I'm in the movie?" And then smiles. So what that tells me, okay, so you know how Michael Keaton is in the Flash movie, right? And so is Supergirl. Well, Supergirl was always connected to a Superman. Wouldn't it be interesting if this Supergirl is connected to the Superman from the Michael Keaton universe? The Superman who would be Nicolas Cage. So now my mind goes to, I'm predicting this now. If it happens, Tyler owes me $100,000. If it doesn't, I don't care. But I'm predicting that when they're in the Keaton universe, they'll go need help from Superman. Superman is dead, and they'll show a clip or a picture or something of Nicolas Cage as Superman as like in memorial to the Superman that died. And then they'll find the Sasha Calle Supergirl. And I'm so positive that's going to happen because the way he said it, I was like, oh, he's already played Superman. Also, he played Superman in voice in Teen Titans Go to the movies.
Interesting theory there, Ronald. But I don't really have one for this.
All right. Well, that brings an end to that segment. Tyler, do you have anything you want to plug?
Our latest Back Day episode, which was my first one.
Wow.
And then I talk about a movie that is readily available to our listeners on Hulu and on HBO Max, The Kingsman. So check that out. We'll leave that link in the description to go listen to my review and kind of talk about all the Kingsmen and how they went, how they led up to this, and how they this is some backstory to the Kingsman, it being the prequel. But check it out. The latest episode, Back Day, is The Kingsman.
Well, I got to tell you what, everybody, that brings an end to our warm-up. It's time. It's the time you've been waiting for. We're getting into the main set. So, Tyler, will you tell us what today's main set is going to be?
Today, we're going to be talking about The Adam Project. At the moment, it's actually in the top 10 of Netflix's most popular movies. And if you have Netflix or you've heard about Netflix's top 10, we have no idea how they come up with these numbers. And most people don't. So it's in the top 10 of their greatest or top movies that have been watched. And something that that was interesting is Ryan Reynolds has 3 movies, I think, in its top 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the other being Red Notice, and then the other one being Six Underground, which was just completely off. But
dude, I got like 6 minutes into that movie and I was like, this is edited so insane. Could not figure out what was happening on screen.
There was an opening scene in that where they're driving, things are just exploding. Yep. Side note for the listeners, it's Michael Bay. And I'm pretty sure I said it out loud. I was like, why did that little like fruit stand just explode out of nowhere? It was like a coffee stand or something. Like there was a car like that, like hit it and it just exploded out of nowhere. I'm like, why would that explode? Like it has no reason to explode, but unless you're in a Michael Bay movie. But we're talking about the Adam Project in our main set, and we got some interesting points that'll connect to other things down the line with this movie coming out. It was directed by Sean Levy, and if you have heard his name, you've probably actually seen it more in producer, in my opinion, producer roles. He was and is a producer on Stranger Things, Arrival, Night at the Museum, which he also directed. And a bigger piece of that is that he was recently signed as the director for Deadpool 3. Ooh. So that connection that he has with Ryan Reynolds, it's been growing over the past couple of years. Ron, take us into the cast.
Well, I just wanted to say, did you see the tease that he did that the Hulk was probably in Deadpool 3?
I've seen those rumors flying around.
Yeah, he posted a picture of Ryan Reynolds with Mark Ruffalo, who plays the father in this film, laying on the ground. And he said, little did I know. And they're laying in front of a cooler with stuff for the set. And it had a Deadpool sticker and a Hulk sticker. And he tweeted it the same day he got announced to hired on. So I thought that was interesting. Another comic book movie alumna that is in this is Jennifer Garner, who we all know is playing Elektra in the world's greatest solo movie, Elektra. She plays Ryan Reynolds' mother, and newcomer Walker Scobell plays young Adam. And I think this kid does a really good job. I think he does a really good job. He's one of the rare like child actors that when you see them, they're not like pretending to act, if that makes sense. Like he's charismatic and he does a really good young Ryan Reynolds. And you can see like this kid's going to probably be a really big movie star.
Yeah, that's actually one of the points I made was that he plays a good version of Ryan Reynolds with the quips and the wittiness. He was just like, as we talked about, how Ryan Reynolds plays himself, right in line with it.
Yeah, and they even had him do a like Kraft macaroni and cheese commercial through the Maximum Effort marketing company that Ryan Reynolds runs, where he just refuses to say the line. He keeps like getting bleeped out and stuff. He's like, I'm so sorry. I should have talked to him. But yeah, I thought he did an excellent job. And the premise is after crash landing in 2022, time-traveling fighter pilot Adam Reynolds teams up with his 12-year-old self for a mission to save the future. So yeah, it brings these two together. It's a really fun dynamic because even though Ryan Reynolds is playing himself, it explains that he's that way, like he's so quippy, whatever, to hide a lot of really dark stuff that happens to him in the intervening years between being 12 and being 43. And it's kind of like juxtaposed with the naivete he has as a 12-year-old. And, you know, going back in time as a 40-year-old, he sees how mean his 12-year-old self was to his mom. So there's like this really good family dynamic that I thought it worked well to create some dramatic tension.
Interesting. I'm going to quickly go back to the director point with it, because I think that's something you kind of saw in the beginning, kind of 15 minutes of the movie with the action and the lines and everything. If you look at Sean's filmography, he does a lot of comedy, and he's been in a lot of comedy stuff, but more recently, a little more action, sci-fi action. And I think it was Jordan Peele who was talking about how doing comedy helped him with horror because of the delivery points. I think you've actually mentioned that as well.
Yes, sir.
With the delivery points of stuff. And so Sean Levy getting now Deadpool 3, it kind of sound like the perfect fit with his role with working with Ryan Reynolds, and then the action comedy. All of that stuff is pretty clear. And from even like the first couple fight scenes in it, how he moves the camera and all the lines that are even built into the fight scenes, the comedy with it. You're like, okay, yeah, kind of makes sense. And one small thing that actually happened last night, I was just kind of looking for something to watch, and I think I was on might have been Showtime, and I saw on there was Kin. I was like, oh, I feel like I've seen a trailer for this before. I rewatched the trailer, and we looked on IMDb, and I think I also looked on Rotten Tomatoes to see what like the score was, and terrible scores, but it's actually produced by Sean Levy and his company.
Oh.
And in the trailer, you see like explosions. It's like a sci-fi kind of movie, but like I feel like the same graphics, same CGI, any like from like Adam Project were in there, like the explosions, the like the blue lights that fly out from like when there's fire and stuff.
Mhm.
You're like, okay, it's like the same stuff, but same look, but it
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I took a note about that too, that the action was solid. It was well covered and well choreographed, which is, like you said, a good sign about Deadpool 3. And a lot of times for action, what's important too is that the main unit director, even if they don't know how to cover action very well, if they have enough sense to let the B unit director, or like usually the action designer or the choreographer, develop it, and they give you previs with camera angles involved. So like when the action designer puts together a fight scene, they'll pre-visualize it with all of their stunt people, right? So they don't bring the actors in yet. They pre-visualize it. They'll even sometimes they'll put in like, just chintzy, real cheap effects, but to show where something would explode. They'll have them in like a mock-up costume, and they'll show you the angles that it's best covered from. They'll show you all of that, and they give that to the director for approval. So it's a good sign, even if the director themselves can't cover action. Just leave it to the people whose job it is to only do the action.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where people get to get their ego out of their own way because the movie's better for it,
Yeah. I feel like I remember watching a lot of those things with Endgame when those came out with the sort of stunt coordinator. And I feel like that actually led to that coordinator getting his own directorial debut.
Yeah.
I know we talked about the movie. I don't think we ever talked about it on a podcast, but it's with freaking
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, Chris Hemsworth.
Distraction, right?
Yeah, but I think those points are definitely clear with it, with the movie and the story of it too. I was actually surprised, and we're not talking yet about spoilers yet. We're almost getting there, but I was pleasantly surprised. I know that when we were planning this episode, it was about 2 weeks ago, and Ron said, how we do it on the Hedda Project? It's pretty popular. And I was like, oh man, now I have to watch it. I honestly wasn't planning on watching it. And like at the beginning, I kind of felt like it was going to be another Netflix stream movie. We just kind of get straight to it. They don't really build much, but as it went on, they build out more things, the story and whatnot. And it's entertaining. That's all I'll probably say before we get into the spoilers.
Yeah. And it made really good use of a great cast. And you could tell they did the thing where everybody's in it just a bit, just enough to make it worth seeing. But it's not like Mark Ruffalo's in it for an hour, because some of these people are hard to get a hold of for a long time. But all right, let's go into your spoiler review and recommendation.
Yes. I'm actually thankful you said spoiler review because I actually thought it was tough luck for Zoe Saldana's character. I think she's like in the movie for maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't want to. That's why I was thinking. I was like, yeah, they know she's hard to get a hold of because she's shooting 19 Avatar sequels, Guardians 3, and the Guardians Christmas special all at once. So that's a busy ass mother effer.
Yeah, that was one piece though that there was no investment in it. I know that's something we talked about with X-Men Dark Phoenix, was we weren't invested in any of the relationships, and I thought it was the same thing with her character. She's barely in the movie. The action with her is pretty good, but you're not really invested in their love story. And when it comes out, like that's why he's coming back, you're like, oh, okay, like maybe we'll see a little more of this, but she's barely in it. And when he dies, you're like, oh well, like what's
they
next?
Did give her some good badass moments though.
Yeah,
like I don't think she was wasted, but yeah, it definitely didn't do a super in-depth job of like fleshing out their relationship.
Yeah, and near the was it the first third of the movie? I feel like that's when it finally kind of picked up for me, where I got an idea of what the movie was about. It wasn't until Ryan Reynolds started explaining Saurian and how their dad invented time travel. But like at the beginning of it, I was just kind of wondering where the movie was going. But like once that started kind of getting into the mix, I thought that was kind of the direction. I was like, okay, this is like a sci-fi action movie like the other movies that they do. But that's kind of my opinion of like the first third of the movie.
Yeah, I feel you, man. And then I feel like what made it stand apart though by the end, because I agree, it was, it could be borderline just regular Netflix fare. But I thought, like I said before, the family dynamic really elevated it. Mm-hmm. Because there was a very strong familial through line, like you said, with or like I had mentioned with him and his mom, and you're like, oh man, it would be weird to go back and see how much of a shit you might have been. Mm-hmm. And then with the whole death of his father and getting to see him again, I thought it was really good. Like it was a good family, wholesome movie. It's along the lines of what we talked about before, of like, it's a fun action adventure movie. You can watch it with your whole family. There's not too much, like, the violence isn't crazy. There's not a lot of cursing. Like if I had kids, it'd be a movie you could throw on with them. And I think that's probably why, again, it ends up getting pretty popular.
Yeah. Something interesting that my wife pointed out was how quickly Mark Ruffalo was able to recognize Adam.
Yeah.
But Jennifer Gardner couldn't recognize him in the bar scene, which was kind
of... My wife mentioned, she was like, I wonder if she's like, who's that hot guy talking to me? Yuck.
But like, why didn't she recognize him? I thought that was kind of a plot hole in my book.
Yeah, I think, but Mark Ruffalo also immediately goes, oh my God, is this time travel? So I think that's why for her, there is no possibility that her son time traveled back 30 years. But for him, he's like, I'm literally building this equation right now. Did I do it? Damn it. Okay, but my biggest gripe about this movie, okay, he comes back to 2022 from 2050, correct? How many years apart is that?
Just do it for me.
28 years, correct? So he's 12 in 2022, right? Which would mean he's 40 years old in 2050. Then when they get on the elevator, when him and Mark Ruffalo go down to the bottom, he's like, you finally take your son to work day. It only took you 44 years. Hey, guess what? You said over and over again, the guy's 40, but now you're saying he's 44. So that pissed me off. Honestly, it almost ruined the movie.
That one line.
Yeah.
That math doesn't add up.
I was so, my wife fell asleep and I was like, hey, babe. She's like, what? She was like half asleep. I was like, didn't they say he was born in 2010? She's like, yeah. I was like, then how's he 44 in 2050? Try not to yell again.
I could see you just...
I was going to email Ryan.
I could see you just waking up, Cece, just barely awakened. That doesn't add up. And her just looking, literally, just like shaking her head at you, like, what? What are you talking about?
Like, in the Wolverine where he wakes up in the middle of the night and pops his claws and screams?
Yeah.
So imagine me laying in bed, okay, shirtless, the window's open, there's a breeze coming in. I start to get sweatier. I get sweatier and I go, he's 44! That's how the night went that night.
I could see it.
All right, moving on. Tyler, do you recommend this movie?
I'm going to go back a bit and let's talk about the first big fight scene. More talking about how it went and how it led into other stuff. I actually thought that this fight scene, which introduces Zoe Saldana's character and into the mix for it, I thought it was actually a nice blend of music, the quips, the camera movement, as we keep talking about with the good sign with Deadpool. But the part of that, then this was actually, Ron's talking about his biggest gripe was with the math not adding up. Mine was actually when they're trying to escape Saurian and they're driving this older, I think it was a K5, and all of a sudden they go off road and they're in like the Pacific Northwest. And if you've ever been to the Pacific Northwest, you know that there's fallen trees in the forest, it's uneven territory, and they're literally just taking this tangent off the freeway, going off road, and they're just driving through it like nothing. And in my book, I'm like, that would never happen. You would have hit some fallen tree or a rock or something, and you would have wrecked your car. There's no way you could just easily just breeze through the forest like that.
Hey, Tyler, this is a movie with time travel. Okay, they can drive through forests. But what you can't do is be 40 and 44 at once. And it's interesting you should say that, Tyler. I actually do recommend the movie as well. I think it's a good family time. And I think if you have the chance and you're so inclined, go check it out. It might make you cry.
Oh, man. I would, I'd pop it on.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about and joked already about how Ryan Reynolds is an okay actor in my book. He's not somebody probably getting nominated, but it's not like we care about the Oscars anyways. But it's something to watch.
You're so white.
It's something to throw on, especially if you have Netflix. But just know that there's going to be some plot holes that just don't make sense, as Ronald said. But good score. I think it kind of actually reminded me of Baby Driver in that, with the blend of music and the sci-fi and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. You know what my wife pointed out too? It was very mid-80s Spielberg, right? It kind of feels like Close Encounters and E.T., like those kind of movies. It has that kind of fun, whimsical vibe to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
I've never seen E.T., but I've been told it's very E.T. As you know, everybody, and Tyler specifically, if somebody's like, oh, that movie's a classic, you should watch it, I go, nope.
You got to be more strategic with it. But,
yeah. And you know what, Tyler, what I always feel when people start telling me to do stuff or asking me to do stuff or even begging me to do stuff, it makes me go, oh, it makes me go, what the fuck? And that brings us to this week's WTF moment. Now, Tyler, whose WTF moment is it?
It's actually yours. So good segue into it.
Thank you. I know it was mine. I didn't know how to go right into my own. So yeah, it's mine. We might have lost track a little bit because last week was a back day. So Tyler kind of got 2 in a row. I don't know if he had one. I haven't had to listen to it yet. But so this week's WTF moment, I'm going to set the scene. Okay. So Friday night, I was doing a project I'm pretty excited about. We ended up wrapping for the night about 3 a.m. So I get home. I have to drive back from downtown. So I get home and in bed about 4 a.m.
The next day.
4 a.m. Friday night. Okay. So I have a 9:45 a.m. call time Saturday morning back in downtown. So, only get to sleep like whatever 4.5, 5 hours that makes, and end up showing up late because it was just so hard to get ready. And then inexplicably long traffic at Saturday in the morning. So we wrap the first half of the day at about 2:30. And I had another call time that night at about 9, and we're supposed to be shooting overnight. So I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I want to sit in the car and drive an hour and a half back home from downtown LA because of the traffic, right? I was like, maybe I'll go see the Batman again and get some lunch and just, make myself busy, and I'll take a nap in the movie theater if I need to, So I'm walking with one of my coworkers back to his car, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'll walk with you, man. I'm going to find somewhere to eat. So say goodbye to him. I turn to go back towards my car. I think I'm going to go over to Grand Central Market, maybe explore, walk around, maybe even have a drink because I have so many hours between call times. And I'm walking back, right? And I see this woman standing on the corner, big red burgundy cardigan, big, long, bright red basketball shorts, right? She's standing there. She's yelling something. And when you do the little squint so your eyes go like binoculars, well, I do the like binoculars. At that moment, she pulls open the cardigan and pulls down the basketball shorts to become what is now ostensibly completely naked. She reaches between her legs and does what appears to be a little pee-pee in her hand and starts splashing it at people, all screaming. And I go, I'm going home. So I those memes where it's like, this is your sign to buy a new backpack. Well, that was my sign to get the absolute fuck out of downtown. And I did. I went home. So that was my WTF moment of the week. And I'm sticking to it.
I'm like trying to picture everything. I'm just like, what?
And then when I drove back, I had to go back down that street because it was like a one-way area. And I'm at the freaking stoplight. And I see her running down in between cars. I'm like, dude, don't pee on my car. Please don't pee on my car.
I have a story on top of yours for my downtown LA story. And don't get me wrong, there are maybe some good places in downtown LA. But when I was growing up in college, I had to go get some information for school. Essentially, going to a state school was free for me because the time that my dad was in the Navy. So I had to go to do 2 different spots in downtown LA. So one of these days I parked and I'm walking back and I see this woman carrying her kid because he doesn't want to walk because he has to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden she's like, just go. And this little kid is literally just shitting on the sidewalk, just dumping on the sidewalk next to my car. So that's just another downtown LA story for.
You know what they say about when in downtown, right?
dump on the streets.
You got to dump out with your rump out.
He definitely pulled his little his little shorts down and went for it.
Good for him, man. Good for him.
Well, we'll continue our cool down with move away from those type of downtown LA stories. But we have my post-workout advice for our listeners to give our listeners a chance to actually get some advice from two people that work in the fitness industry. And
allegedly,
that's what we do outside of this podcast. And my advice is to take some time and invest in items outside of exercise. I know that's the big thing people always think about. Oh, I need to lose weight. I need to do cardio. I need to do weight training. I need to do all these different things that they're stress on the body. Mm-hmm. So taking time to invest in things that rest the body. They could be active recovery. So maybe walking or even massage. Maybe you like meditation, but things that give the body a chance to rest. And I'm one, and I know I've probably even shared in the podcast, that I like to go 100% in a lot of aspects. But I've really realized over the last few years, as I start to age, is that I need to give my mind and my body a rest. So those things help with longevity, help with performance. And of course, you want to make sure that you're coming back for more and able to. And you got to give your body some rest in order to do that.
Agreed, man. You got to give that mind and booty rest. Great takeaway, Tyler. Is there anything else you have to add for us today?
I think we're just going to wrap things up with talking about what we're watching.
All right, sounds good, man.
Yeah, as we're actually recording this, a show that I know probably both of us are excited to watch is now available on Disney Plus, which is Moon Knight. So I'll be adding that to my list.
Yeah, I think this will probably be the first Disney Plus thing we'll actively cover once it ends. Because I've heard good reviews about it, and it's the first character besides Loki that went straight to Disney Plus that I was actually really interested in seeing. And as you know, I am a big Oscar Isaac fan.
I was just about to say that.
He's one of my wife's number one celebrity crushes.
I didn't know that.
Which, you know what? I'm totally fine with. He's got the head of hair that if you sewed Tyler's hair to my hair and then shaved a cat and shaved one of Tyler's cats, we still wouldn't have the head of hair that Oscar Isaac has. That guy's hair is so thick, and he's got a chin like you wouldn't believe. Jeez Louise.
I'm just thinking about things that he's been casted in. And my WTF moment from a few episodes back when I think he was cast as Middle Eastern.
Oh, yeah. Did you see what he talked about that on Saturday Night Live, where he's like, yeah, the good thing about being me is you can play anybody from, blah, blah, to freaking Timothy Chalamet's daddy.
Yeah.
But what else are you watching?
It's kind of funny that we've been actually binge watching Restaurant Impossible. Wow. So my wife has the the Discovery app. And I don't know really why I watch it, because I literally just get really mad while watching it. Because these owners, I'll say this right now, it's not workout advice, but it's business advice. Oh. Is that not everybody should be in business? No, to be honest, if you were like, oh, maybe I should. No, don't. You don't want to. So you watch and you're just like, why are these people you worked in IT before, but now you want to own a restaurant? Yeah, no, don't do it. Also on there, we're watching Tournament of Champions, which is pretty interesting. For a cooking show, I usually don't really watch those, but started watching that. There's Minx on HBO, which I recommended to you to watch with
oh, yes,
Jake Johnson, it's pretty funny. And a movie that I watched over the weekend that I felt like needs a reboot, but I thought was pretty good, was Last Castle. It's relatively old. Young Mark Ruffalo's in it. Oh. But the movie was kind of filmed like it should be, like they were trying to be too artsy with it. Just have something to be out of focus.
How dare you make something that's art?
It was not art. It was just cheesy. But it should be remade.
You're cheesy. You should be remade. Boom! Zing! Burned.
What are you watching, Ronald?
Obviously, The Adam Project. Immediately upon finishing that, I watched the Injustice animated movie, which I felt was not as good as the game or the comic book, but it was fine. The animation was so annoyingly weird. I watched the movie Fresh on Hulu with Sebastian Stan. Have you seen anything about that?
I think I watched a trailer. That's about it.
I think you might enjoy it. It's good. It's good suspense. Not to give too much away, but I feel like it's one of those movies that has such a great like first 5/6 almost. And it just kind of unwinds a little bit at the end where it gets a little frustrating and it gets a little, okay, obviously that's going to happen. But it was still a good time. And if you have Hulu, you already have it. So I'd say check it out. I watched the first episode of Winning Time, which I know we discussed last time we were together.
Mm-hmm.
And I just finished last night The Boys Diabolical, the Boys animated series. Have you seen it yet?
I have not.
It's fine. All the episodes are like 10 to 12 minutes long. It's kind of interesting because they're all different art styles. Like 3 of them are maybe 2. I think 2 of them. One is directly connected to this show. Actually, now I think about it. And the other ones are just kind of loosely in the universe. And one of them is directly connected only to the comic book universe because it literally shows somebody pick up a comic book, open it, and then it dives in. But it's okay. Honestly, it feels a little bit not half baked, but it definitely doesn't have the same like attention to detail that the mainline show has.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because it's animation too, they wanted to go even farther with like the violence and some of like the more upsetting aspects. And it just makes it kind of no fun to watch, at least for me.
Okay.
But you know, if they're 15 minutes long. So if you're interested, check it out. Maybe you'll love it.
Okay. Well, I actually remember there's actually one other movie that
there we go.
I watched that I know that you would like to chime in on, but we watched just randomly because we're just looking for something to watch. Chronicle, which is on Amazon Prime, and I hadn't seen it before. And I typically don't watch those types of movies because I feel like I get a headache when it's just like the
found footage.
Yeah, like I've never seen the Blair Witch Project because like the first 5 minutes just gave me a headache.
Or like the Blair Bitch Project because you're too scared to watch it.
But it was interesting, and I mean they made after that, what was that, Project Almanac, which was like the same story. It's not the same story, but filmed similarly.
Have you ever seen the anime Akira?
I have not.
Well, Josh Trank just basically did Akira with Chronicle, but it was good. I like Chronicle, but he did Akira.
Gotcha. Well, interesting stuff.
That's funny. I remember seeing Chronicle live and in person with my boy Steven and Nat. And I think Eddie at Edom might have been there, but it was a fun time. We saw it on Super Bowl Sunday in the year it came out. All right. Well, if you don't have anything else you're watching, is there anything you're going to watch? Wink, wink, Morbius.
I'm actually not going to go see it.
All right. So next week I'll talk about, hey, how about this? Okay. Everybody vote in the comments or write us on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, wherever you want to contact us at MovieBuffs_podcast. But write us whether or not you'll have until say next Wednesday or Thursday to decide whether or not you want me to see Morbius and give a review to Tyler, but he doesn't know what's real or not, or he has to see it too. So answer below, let us know. If only one person votes, then we got to do what they say. But yeah, if you don't see it, Tyler, I will give you a review and I will not tell you what aspects are real. Oh, I'm going to have such a good time. So I guess that's it, right, LT Gray?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, each and every person, for listening and taking time out of your day. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that. Please be sure to follow us, as I mentioned before, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at MovieBuffs_podcast. If you like this episode, share it and leave us a 5-star review on your favorite platform and help spread the word. And if you don't like this, share it and leave us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It really helps us spread the word and keeps the podcast growing. Check the links in the description to check out all the great companies that help support the podcast. And please do not forget to join us next week when we discuss Tyler's cotton ball fetish. Find out where he likes to put them and where he likes to have them removed. Stay buff, my friends. Bye.
Feeling inspired by hosts Ron and Tyler to work on your health? The MovieBuffs Podcast is brought to you by Time to Train Fitness. Use the link in the description to view all of the membership options and to start a free 5-day trial. Get ready to press play on your next workout.